Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one in our series of In My Experience. I'm Helen Cooper, and I'm the founder of the Helen Cooper School of Luxury. And the foundation stone of that school is for people like yourselves to be able to learn from the experience of not only myself and our tutors, but also from a selected group of Indian entrepreneurs who have been making their way in luxury for the last number of years, and we feel could have a really inspirational story for you. We are, as always, joined and hosted by Shreya Agarwal, our good friend and an expert in luxury branding. And today, Jeetinder Sandhu, who is responsible for some of my most favorite luxury items, which are shoes and bags. So I'm looking forward to hearing what his inspiration is and how he's got to where he is right now as a leading designer. So welcome to you, Jeetinder, and over to you, Shreya.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you always for the lovely introduction. And thank you, Jeetinder. Thank you so much for accepting our invite and taking time out for this conversation. So really appreciate that.
No, thank you for having me on board. I'm happy to share my journey with you guys.
So, as you mentioned, that let's begin with talking a little bit more about your journey in terms of, becoming a shoe and fashion designer.
Right. So I think let's just start from the beginning. Just a little bit about my background. I have grown up in many different parts of India. My father was in the service and he worked with UNICEF. So there was a lot of transfers and relocating to different parts of India while I was growing up. So I got to see many different sides to India, you may say. I'm Punjabi, of course, so that's my cultural background. Born in Rajasthan, in Udaipur, a beautiful city. I think I would say it's one of the cultural capitals of India because it's so rich in the arts and handicrafts. And then brought up in Bihar, in Patna for 12 years. Again, very strong with the arts as well. So I think seeing these different cities and cultures and people while growing up actually played a very strong part in my design sensibilities, what I'm doing today. And also my mom used to have a handicraft business, which she started in Rajasthan, and she then took it over to Bihar where I was growing up. So I think, initially for the first 4 or 5 years of my life, I just remember being in my mom's shop and being surrounded by these beautifully handmade items around me. And it was just a second nature to me, having them around me, growing up with them. And my parents as well, both of them, my father and my mom, really were very supportive of the arts. They always encouraged me to pursue them, to paint, to express myself through it. So that was a very strong push from them for me to sort of take it in a career as well. And that was like the initial growing up years. And then moving on to the serious part of it, I finished my high school in Delhi, and I decided to pursue design, of course. So I had the option of either doing fashion designing, product designing, or interiors. And for me, fashion, I think, was something that was very close to me, and instinctively, I was drawn to it much more. So I did some research. I actually also even consulted some career counselors at that time when I was in high school. And I think Marangoni was one of the schools that came up, it is actually one of the oldest fashion schools in the world, and it's had a very prestigious name. So I decided to go to London. I did my bachelor's in fashion designing from there. It was a 3-year course, and at that time, Marangoni had 3 campuses. It was in London, Paris, and Milan. Of course, now the Marangoni family has also expanded a lot. They have a campus in Bombay as well now, and in the US, and they're expanding very well. But back then, this was 10 years, maybe 11 years back. For me, I think it was initially a choice between Milan and London. Milan, of course, it's the design capital, also one of the strongest ones, actually. But London was seemed to be a better choice for me because of the language. I did not speak Italian. And also, I feel London was, in terms of just how innovative and creative they are as compared to Milan. Milan is much more traditional in its approach to design, whereas London is much more creative and innovative in that sense. I felt much more at home there. So I decided to move there. I did 3 years, like I said, at my bachelor's at Marangoni. And through them, I had the opportunity to showcase at Graduate Fashion Week. It's a platform for graduates to showcase their work. It's obviously a selected process. There's a jury and there's a whole process of going through getting selected and showcasing there. But I was lucky enough to do that, go through that process and showcase my work. And it was actually one of the most talked about shows that year. I managed to get a lot of press coverage for it. I was doing men's clothing at that time. So with that collection, I launched my business. I felt it was a great time, and I had obviously had a very, very good debut show at GFW. So I wanted to bank on it and just take things forward. So I was actually working between between Delhi and London for a very long time. I did 2 years actually for menswear clothing, and doing shows between the different cities in Europe, in Berlin, in Paris, and London. I was always sourcing for shoes from different brands and different designers, and somehow, unfortunately, not really fitting with my collection for garments. And as a creative person I am, I decided, let me just try and see how it works out if I do it myself. Because in India, we have a lot of shoe cobblers and shoemakers, which are very easily accessible. And just through that, by accident, I would say, I came upon shoes. I found a very nice shoemaker. It was very traditional in its approach, very artisanal. And it was a great experience for me to see how handmade shoes are, produced and what goes into making it. It's actually very, it's beautiful to experience. And I decided, okay, let me just see if I can, get into this. And also at that time, I felt, observing from a business point of view, how well products were doing, comparing it with my shoe collection, which I did, like I said, and comparing it with my garments. Shoes was becoming a sector and a field that I felt was doing much better. Also, this was around 2014, I would say, around 14. And I felt that also at the time, there weren't many, I would say, shoemakers or at least fashionable shoe designers in India. There were a handful that I can count on. And so I decided, let me just see how it goes, because commercially I was getting a very good response. And I actually even liked the process of shoemaking. So I decided that I should focus entirely on shoes. So after doing menswear for 2 years, I decided to close that and focus entirely on shoes for men. I did that also for a very long time. And then over the years, we started getting a lot of requests from our female friends, from a lot of female potential clients who were messaging us saying, hey, listen, we see that you're doing these shoes for men, but it would be great if you can do it for us as well. So we were getting a lot of requests. So finally, I think in 2019 beginning, we actually launched our women's shoe line as well. And but it took us a long time to get to that point, because the team that I was working with is only equipped and well-trained for making men's shoes. So we had to teach them the skills and get them trained and sort of teach them how to make women's shoes, because women's shoes are also a lot more technical when it comes to heels, and the technical aspects are much more complex. Right. So it took us a few years to get them to that point, but we felt we were ready. And also, I think there's one other thing I would like to point out is that, like I say, we were focusing on men's and women's shoes. But today, I think after 2-3 years later, I think we've reached a point where we have stopped identifying the different genders for shoes. Like we're not calling them either men's shoes or women's shoes. We are now just calling them shoes for all, because we feel that our products are quite gender fluid and gender neutral. So we are not discriminating. So everyone is welcome.
Right.
We actually even made shoes for drag queens and people who love to wear heels. Guys, there's so many people who want to wear heels, but they don't get it in their size. So I think that's a very, very strong point I want to let you know, is that we are now creating shoes for all. And along with that, bags were also something that I was very keen on doing. We actually launched a very small collection earlier this year. Very, very small, just small, like clutches and handbags. And now we're working more on them to actually come up with some more designs, hopefully next year.
That's a really big move, isn't it? To go to gender neutral is incredibly modern. Well, it's a great step. Sorry about the pun there for shoes, but that's a really good move.
Definitely, because I think who are we to sort of dictate to someone what they can and cannot wear? Because I personally myself, I shop from women's section all the time, even on websites, or if I go to the store, it's always nice to see what's happening, and I always pick up a lot of pieces for myself from there. So I feel in general, as well as an industry, I think a lot of people are now realizing that there's this untapped market and there's this untapped segment of people who we are neglecting. And it's not fair. And I think as inclusive as we say we are, I think we need to actually physically do it as well.
Right. Very important.
Yeah, fantastic.
We talk about inclusivity all the time, but how much of it do we actually practice? And that goes in everything. From it shows in our cultures, it shows in organizational behavior, it shows in the product market that you're talking about. And I think it always comes down to the fact that because you kind of approach things in that manner, because you were looking for things and you were like, why don't people go for it? So that their own inspiration, I think, is also very important. When you feel that there is a need, why not fill the gap? So, yeah.
Exactly.
So, Jeetinder, we're talking about your brand in terms of this evolution that's happened. Obviously, I always say that brand is not built over a night or over a year, and the vision also evolves. Obviously, you have a steady vision, but it kind of keeps evolving, right? But through that process, there's something that is your brand purpose. That kind of always remains there with you. So what was your brand purpose while creating or even launching the brand, and till date when you're evolving with the business?
I would say individuality. I think that's been a very, very strong part of my brand. And I think I've always believed in, I've also said this a lot actually as well, is that my brand is like an extension of who I am, and it's my personality, it's my form of expression. And I'm someone who's have very I like to be on my own and have my own voice. And my personality is such that it's very unique, and I think that has been reflected into the products I make and design. Is this sense of uniqueness. They are quite unlike anything that is available in the market, I would say, at least in India. So I think that would be one. And secondly, I think global outlook to design is also, I think, something that has been strongly relevant to my brand purpose, is that looking at things, what's happening all around, and not just in India,
Definitely. That gives you a very different perspective. Right. When you are seeing the world from a different perspective, and then you collaborated with your culture. you spin, the design sense spins, your motivations, your skills, actually, you look at things from a very different angle. And when you're talking about this individuality, like how I've obviously been through your interviews, before I was reaching out to you. And I know that you've spoken a lot about how important is it for you to kind of channelize your individuality to the product that you are creating, right? And also, what I've realized is on your website that you do a lot of made to order, So I wanted to understand that, is it intentionally done because you feel that every person needs to have their own individual piece so that it's different from the mass market? Even when I compare it to the luxury brands, because we have similar designs that everybody has, right? Is that your way of saying that, okay, that's my form of luxury as the brand that I want people to have?
I think that certainly, because I think one of the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about luxury is personalization. And I think, given the fact that I work on such small quantities of numbers and products, because I'm not dealing with mass numbers here, we have the freedom to customize and get something to our customers that is unique and bespoke to them.
Yeah.
A lot of weddings, and how lavish and extravagant our Indian weddings are. I mean, we have so many outfits, and each outfit requires its own jewelry, its own bags, its own shoes. Everything has to be, so it's a look. And that's where I think is also a strong point for us to come in and say that, listen, we have this option for you to completely create a shoe that has so many memories attached to it, because you're creating something that's only for you. We have so many clients who come to us as well with special fabrics that are either, pieces that were their grandmother's saris or textiles or something like that, and that has such a strong emotional value to it. And you have that responsibility to create something beautiful from it, and create a tangible product that's going to be with them, and that's going to be actually, they're going to have it closer to them, rather than it just lying in a trunk somewhere in their storage. So I think that's a lot of that has to do with luxury as well, if you look at it. And all our products, by the way, are made on order. We have no stock. There is no inventory. We only have samples and the collection that we come up with. Mm-hmm. And then every client has to place an order, and then it gets specially made for them. And in this aspect, we can also work on sizing, because sizing is such an important part of shoes, because every foot is different. No one is a size 6. No one is everyone has a different foot. So we have that ability to give them something that is very comfortable to them. And these people have to wear these shoes for a long time. It's not just something you wear it once. And that's not the approach for me and my business. We make shoes that people can actually wear and enjoy as well, and be fashionable at the same time.
We also touched upon this thing, and this topic is very dear to me. How you mentioned about having this global perspective, right? Now, when we see Indian brands coming up, also the brands which have not reached the global space, do you think that this adaptability to the modern sense and sensibilities can make them more globally adaptable? Or, is it a hindrance for Indian brands because they do not kind of adapt to the Western sense and sensibilities? I'm not saying that they need to change themselves. I'm just saying that the reason to adapt, I think that's something that we even expect the Western brands to adapt to the local cultures too, right? So how do you think it has helped your brand? Plus, what do you think Indian brands can take as an approach towards going global? So I know there are two different questions, so you can just choose how you want to go about it.
Okay. I think, I can say from my personal experience and what I have also observed, I think definitely, I think you need to have a very, very good balance between your cultural roots and what you're trying to say, and also then having this global sort of outlook and sort of being innovative and fresh. I mean, you can't have, it can't be too much of one thing. You need to have a nice balance. That's very, very important, especially for a brand like mine, where I actually say that, it is a very strong part of my design aesthetic that I bring the Indianness to the product. You also have to understand and realize who your customer is. It can be someone in India, it can be someone in the UK or Europe or Germany, wherever. But also who this customer is, where the customer is going, what is he going to do, or what is she going to do, and also like what your brand is trying to say. That's very, very important to understand. These are the basics you need to get right, I feel. And looking at what's happening right now in India, I agree there are a lot of brands coming up, and I think it is a very good route down to go for, like where you have this connection with your roots. And I'm seeing a lot of very nice brands coming up, actually. And I think it's important to also see what's happening abroad, because you can't just take what's happening domestically and then put that onto the global market. That's not going to work, because the customer in India, like what this brand is designing for, is not going to be the same customer for you in, say, in an abroad country, for example. So adaptability is, I think, a strong part of this.
Yeah, I think that's why, Helen, it's very important for Indian brands to understand which market they want to get into, and that adaptability is necessary for our brands. Once they do that, I think they have a lot of scope to kind of go and expand into these markets. So I know, Jeetinder, there has been a lot of iteration since you started the brand. But what are those couple of things that you wish you'd known while starting the brand? This might help our viewers. Like, okay, let us not do that mistake. I know there's nothing like mistake. Everything is learning, but
definitely everything I would say is it's part of the journey. You make mistakes, but I think, okay, there are a couple of things I would say. Firstly, being patient and giving yourself some time, because like you said, nothing happens overnight. You have to have the patience to for it to play out and see how it's going through. And so I would say that to myself, when I would have started, like, just have a little bit of patience and give yourself some, space to breathe. And firstly, that would be the first thing. And I think then the second thing would be, for me, I think I wish I had a better understanding of how the Indian fashion ecosystem is. I think that was something that was a little difficult for me to firstly understand and then also adapt to, because I think my first experience was actually with the UK market. I was in that industry from right after my graduation, so I think I had much of an experience there as compared to India. But now I'm much more in India, on the contrary. So it has taken me a little bit of time to understand and settle down. And I think thirdly also would be, I think, related to this, but in terms of customers. I feel not to sound in a negative way, but it's just that I feel I have customers globally. I have customers in Europe and in India and in Australia and the US. When it comes to the Indian customers, it's a little difficult. You have to, because they're always a little budget conscious. So when it comes
value conscious consumers.
Yes. So for them, there's always this desire to have a budget-friendly product as compared to a fashionable product. So they tend to shift more towards that rather than the design. Whereas, as creatives and as a designer, you probably the customer is not realizing that how much time and effort goes into actually creating these things. And especially, when you're working with artisans or people who are doing handwork and, or working with vintage textiles, all the sourcing and all the work that goes into keeping these things in check and in mind, it's expensive. So people tend to forget that and just focus more towards budget. I think that these three things I would say, I think when I would be starting off would be to keep in mind,
Yeah, definitely Indian buyers are value conscious buyers, and brands need to know that, how to tactfully take care of that. It's necessary. I think this is where the concept of educating the consumers come through, so that you tell them more about how time consuming this entire process is. There are a number of hours that the artisan works on it, and how the design thinking takes time. So I feel the more we talk about it, the consumers will eventually, get aware about these concepts. Now, since you've mentioned that now you're more in pally with the Indian market, right? In the Indian luxury market, where do you think the market is going? When you see your brand, right? What's the difference that you've seen in the market in the so far times that you've been?
I think a very important thing is what the brand is trying to say. I think the narratives and the storylines coming through the brands has become much more stronger. It's much more clearer. There's a proper storyline and a narrative that's coming across. If you look at a mix of brands here, because you have brands like Turani, who has a beautiful sort of narrative, and they have something to say, and you can actually see it visually through their products and the storytelling and the campaigns. So I think that I'm starting to see much more now with Indian brands in the luxury segment. Individual identities and aesthetics. Every brand has their own sort of style and ideas, and that's I feel every year it's getting stronger and stronger. I'm actually enjoying to see that in the Indian space. In the future, I hope, and I mean, I really hope so, is that that one or at least a few of them can actually make it through to the global market space, because I think it's about time.
It's about time, right?
We need to have an Indian name out there as well. I mean, and there are names. I'm not denying that. I mean, you have Sabyasachi, who has managed to work with H&M and Krishan.
People are crazy about Manish Arora.
Yes. Of course. I mean, I was going to say next him as well, because I mean, to see him in Paris, but unfortunately,
I'm sorry to cut you there, but every stylist that I've been in Paris with, the first name that they used to come out was like Manish Arora. We love his designs. That's his first name, and I think, yes, he absolutely did beautiful work.
He's so creative and an absolute genius, I would say. And we need more names like that in the global space now. And I feel it's about time. And I'm sure in the couple of years, in the next maybe 3-4 years, I'm sure someone will have a breakthrough and take it globally.
I'm sure. I mean, that's why we are more than happy to talk to brands who actually would want to go global, or currently working in that entire domain where they vision themselves to take themselves global. Beautifully narrated the entire event, Jeetinder. Thank you so much for today. But on that note, one piece of advice that you would want to leave our viewers with, in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of getting into the luxury domain, what do you think? That anything?
I think my one advice would be believe in yourself. I think it's a bit of a cliche, but it's so true. You have to, if there's something that you believe in, just go for it. But also, I think listening to your gut feeling and instincts is extremely important. I think I wouldn't be here if I had not listened to sort of what my instincts were saying. So listen to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jeetinder. That was it was a lovely conversation with you this evening. Helen, on that note, would you like to add anything to this?
Well, I've been taking, as usual, lots of notes.
As usual. Helen
Well,
keeps
thank
on
you.
taking notes.
I do. I take lots of notes. Well, thank you. Definitely to echo what Shreya was saying. Fascinating story. I love the fact that it was your father working in UNICEF that got you into lots of different regions, and you got that perspective then as a child, and that's really carried through in terms of the influence within your own work, which is fascinating. I think classically, when people start up in a business, it's because they were dissatisfied with what they found in the first place. So for you to move from fashion effectively into shoes is a really classic way of being able to do that. And the sort of shoes that you're doing are so different, so unique, that you can see the passion and the styling element that are coming through into there. So that's fascinating for me. I love that. Your brand purpose to almost enable individuality and personality to come through every element of your clothing, through your shoes and handbags. I think it's amazing. And this very brave and very modern step, which I absolutely applaud you for, to go gender neutral. It's fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot more brands across all the different sort of product sectors really stepping up and saying it's not just talking the talk about inclusivity, we're actually going to walk the walk. And your shoes are definitely the way that we're going to walk that walk. I think in the same way as sustainability is something people have to really buy into and do something about, this whole inclusivity is something which is fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing your journey. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to find that really inspirational. And I'm sure you'll probably find an awful lot more people who are looking you up and buying your shoes as a result. I will keep my fingers crossed for that.
Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely talking to you guys.
Thank you very much.